Focus now, Republican Congressman John James of the great state of Michigan, of course, a retired Apache pilot as well. Great to have you. You know, I question the legality of some of the moves in the so-called resistance. Should there be concern there?
Absolutely, there should be concern for the people who are actively thwarting the will of the American people and the desire that the American people have to be safe in their own homes. I went down to the southern border myself and visited, and I heard stories from Customs and Border Patrol agents that said the number one thing that we could do is reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. President Trump on day one reinstated the reinstated the great policy that he put in Remain in Mexico and overturned the terrible policies of the Biden administration that's going to make Americans more safe. And you're continuing to see this, and those who are thwarting those efforts should absolutely be held accountable.
So, President of Mexico, Sheinbaum today, opened a conversation under threat of tariff. Apparently, she totally believed that was going to happen because now she's sending 10,000 members of her own military in Mexico to their side of the border to try to stem the tide across the border to us.
Look, President Trump doesn't make threats. He makes promises, and he keeps his promises. President Trump recognizes that the world is not used to a strong American president. Well, that changed with the 47th American president. President Trump is strong, he means what he says, and he keeps his promises to the American people. He is absolutely securing our southern border and making Mexico pay for it. 10,000 National Guard troops from Mexico surging to the border, specifically tasked with targeting fentanyl traffickers and human traffickers. When I went down the border, we got stories. Over 100,000 children lost by the Biden administration. Dozens and dozens of thousands of murderers and rapists released into the American population, which actually hurt the American people and killed the American people. And he was able to exact concessions from the Mexicans, and over the next month, the Secretary of State, Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Treasury is going to be negotiating good, solid terms to secure the American economy and secure our southern border. That is what we need to expect from our allies. And the next step is remembering that our great allies in Canada have a role to play as well. And so we're looking to make sure we secure our northern border, too, because Michigan, of course, is a northern border state.
Yeah, and already today, the outgoing leader, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, has already had a conversation with President Trump, and just a couple of hours from now, they're due to have another one. Real quickly, before we move on, what does that tell you?
It tells that the president is effective, and peace through strength works right here at home to start. 86% of the terrorists on the FBI watch list actually come through on the northern border, and Canada actually is done continuing to subsidize its climate change, Green New Deal efforts on the backs of Americans. They're going to start paying their own way in defense. They're going to start paying their own way in pharmaceuticals. And yes, while Canada is a very close and important ally, we expect partnerships, not dependency on America.
Wow. The National Transportation Safety Board is now investigating those two deadly plane crashes from last week. In Philadelphia Friday night, a small medical jet crashed fewer than just a couple minutes after takeoff. And this video shows debris flying through the window of a restaurant near that crash site. Wow. You can see a man get hit in the head there. The crash killed at least 6 people on the plane and 1 on the ground. 22 others were injured, we understand, on the ground. And in Washington, D.C., recovery operations continue after an American Airlines commuter jet under American Eagle, Flight 5342, and an Army helicopter collided in midair near the Reagan National Airport. The Army Corps of Engineers is now leading the salvage operation and plans to start lifting operations to remove wreckage today. Officials say the remains of 55 of the 67 people who died have now been recovered. The Army also identified a 3rd soldier inside the helicopter, a captain, Rebecca Lobach of Durham, North Carolina. Staff Sergeant Ryan O'Hara and Chief Warrant Officer Andrew Eves were identified as the other 2 people inside the helicopter. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy.
One of the questions that we're going to ask is what happened in the tower, what was going on with the staffing, what should have been done, and what was done. But also we have questions about what was the position of the Black Hawk? Why were they flying a mission at 9 o'clock at night through really busy airspace around DCA, as opposed to flying that mission at 1 o'clock in the morning when there's very little traffic around DCA? I want our military to be trained up and ready to go, but I also want air travelers to be safe as well, and there's a time and a place to do it.
Well, the time is now. Americans are continuing to fly. And you hear the Secretary, the Treasury Secretary Duffy there giving people the confidence that they're doing everything that they possibly can to make it safer. What concerns do you have, though, in particular in the D.C. crash and that airspace and air traffic control, if that plays a role?
Well, first of all, Secretary Duffy absolutely nailed it, took full responsibility and asked very legitimate questions for why this is the way it was when it happened. I think he'd been secretary for less than a week at that particular point, and he's leading from the front. Yeah. He's asking the questions about why was the airspace not conflicted. But again, we have to think about the human lives that were lost. As we continue on going with this negotiation, and this investigation, we're going to continue to wrap our arms around the family members of both the Army members and also the ones who have lost a commercial flight. The American people operate in the safest airspace in the world, but Secretary Duffy is going to go about how we improve our existing infrastructure in the airspace, how we keep it free of foreign interference, and also how we make sure that we have the most and best talent throughout our aviation sectors, because the American people deserve to have zero doubt that when they take off, they will land safely.
So it's interesting. I mean, you get to that point of merit, and that's been part of the discussion brought on by a very emotional President Trump last week as he first was speaking about the loss of human life and what had happened. We'll continue to take a look at that issue. Also, with the Philadelphia crash, I mean, we'll get to the bottom of it because they are determined to get to the bottom of it. Congressman James, it's always great to have you. The best to you and your family.
Thank you, my friend.